Hello and welcome to the latest Society for the Environment webinar. Today we are focusing on the process of applying for Chartered Environmentalist registration. This is very much an overview and we will let you know how to find out more details and locate the specifics of what you need to do for your application depending on your chosen pathway. To start with, some introductions. So my name is Phil Underwood. I'm the Society's Engagement Manager, and today I'm joined by Jeff Atkins, who is our Head of Licensing, Registration and Standards. Over the next hour, we aim to shine a spotlight on the underlying processes involved in reaching your Chartered Environmentalist goal in the form of a presentation, then answer as many questions as we can. For those watching the webinar as a recording, or if you need to leave before the Q&A section, please feel free to contact Jeff or I with any questions using the email addresses on your screen. We'll give another reminder of that at the end of the webinar as well, in case you haven't had a chance. We're now going to turn our cameras off. That's to avoid our heads getting in the way of any of the presentation, but we'll be back on for the Q&A later on. Okay, so before we delve into the world of Chartered Environmentalist registration, I'm going to start off with a bit of background to the Society of the Environment, just to help understanding and to give an idea of why we exist, really. Our core role is to hold the register for competent environmental professionals who have met or continue to meet a level of competence in their environmental work and their overall professionalism. There are currently just over 8,000 registered environmental professionals known as registrants. And I hope many of you watching today will be able to join that 8,000 plus in the coming weeks or months. And we do all this in partnership with 26 professional bodies currently. So this is what we believe in. The sentence on your screen is a bit long-winded, but essentially through Royal Charter, we exist to champion sustainability through environmental professionalism. So we believe that proven, competent environmental professionals across all sectors are key to a sustainable future. So put simply, we want the decisions that impact the environment to be made by those with proven competence. And that's where the registrations come in. And these are said registrations. So there are 3 different professional registrations that we regulate: the Registered Environmental Technician, or REvTech, the Registered Environmental Practitioner, or REvP, and the Chartered Environmentalist, or CEnv. And you might hear us refer to Chartered Environmentalist as CEnv throughout the webinar. It's much easier to say. So these registrations are positioned in a progressional way. Some will therefore use RFP as a demonstration of their solid commitment to being on that progressional ladder towards chartership, as a bit of an example. So having said that, RFTech or RFP might be the competence level for you, with CEnv being unrealistic, at least for now, and that is perfectly fine. Essentially, these are the global benchmarks for excellence in environmental practice, ensuring that our workforce and businesses are equipped to tackle the environmental crises we are facing. So together, we can build a more sustainable future. And that's the end goal. Before we get into the how to apply, I'd like to give a bit of a taster into the why. The key benefits that current CEnvs stated in our 2021 survey were increased credibility with clients and stakeholders, increased self-confidence, and increased career opportunity. So the credibility theme always comes out on top, and it's a huge benefit. With the CEnv letters after your name, you are instantly telling people that you've been externally verified as a highly knowledgeable, up-to-date professional when it comes to environmental good practice and leadership and technical ability. So increasing amounts of employers are using chartership as a requirement for progression, and some offer financial incentives, which is always nice. And as an example, we know of large consultancies now who require CEnv registration to sign off certain environmental reports. So it's increasingly becoming a known mark of trust and responsibility. Employers see benefits too through proven staff competence, helping to win work and improving their brand and demonstrating that their staff are working on projects are at the top of their game. But the fact that many employers value chartership means that having it can only be a positive thing for progressing your career. And interestingly, the IES, the Institution of Environmental Sciences, they found that on average their CEnv members get paid 33% more than their non-CEnv members, which is not a bad statistic to tell you, really. The last word from me for now. Achieving CEnv will put you on par with 8,000 chartered environmentalists from a vast range of sectors and roles and across the world, all making evidence-based decisions with proven competence and professionalism. You will be part of a global community of professionals who have committed to use their expertise to address environmental challenges and progress opportunities that are available. The CEnv, RMP and RMTech registrations bring you together, and we think that is hugely important to creating a more sustainable world. I'd like to now hand over to Jeff to run through the core of today's webinar. Thank you for joining us, Jeff. If I can,
thank you, Phil.
I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Phil, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Today, we are focusing on CEnv and how to become a Chartered Environmentalist. These are the 5 steps you need to take to become a CEnv. Firstly, if you've not done so already, join one of our licensed professional bodies. Now, here are the names, logos of the 26 professional bodies we currently license to assess and register appropriately qualified and experienced individuals for CEnv. We will soon be announcing our 27th licensed professional body. So you need to join the one most appropriate to your sector and speak to them about your plans to apply. They will provide you with an application pack to complete and submit for assessment. Apart from completing an application form, they may ask you to include your CV and CPD record in your submission. If they are satisfied with your application, you will be invited to an interview. And the final step before registration is to sign our Code of Professional Conduct. The important thing in this is your professional body will tell you how they run their CEnv assessment process and any associated fees. So, moving on to the competencies. When you apply for CEnv registration, you are providing evidence that you meet all, and I stress all, 11 CEnv competencies. These are in 4 groups. A and B will focus on your sector, and as such may be contextualized by your professional body. Then we have the C and D competencies. Now, these are sometimes known as soft skills because they're across every sector, but they are just as important as A and B. Please note competence D1, which is about doing CPD to maintain and enhance competence in area of practice. This is important in not just gaining, but retaining your CEnv registration. So, a quick reminder of the 5 steps you need to take in your journey to Chartered Environmentalist registration. Join and speak to your professional body, one of our licensed professional bodies. Complete and submit your application, attend your interview, and sign the Code of Professional Conduct. Throughout the whole application and assessment process, your key contact is your professional body. So please speak to them.
Thank you very much, Jeff. So we're going to picture the scenario for the next bit. You have been successful in achieving your CEnv goal. What can you expect to happen next? So firstly, your professional body will inform us of your successful application, which will trigger us to add you to the official register here at the Society for the Environment. We will send your official CEnv certificate to you in the post with a CEnv badge. We will then add you to the online directory of registrants on our website, which you can use to prove your CEnv status to clients and so on. You can start using the CEnv logo, which I think is on the slide here. There we go. So you can use that on your email signatures and the CEnvs letters after your name on LinkedIn or on your CV or wherever you can possibly think of to showcase your CEnv registration. Now you've gone through the effort of gaining your CEnv registration and you probably want to keep hold of it. So there are 3 steps to do this, and they include retain or remain a member of one of our professional bodies, our licensed professional bodies. This could be the professional body you achieved your CEnv with. So say you applied through CIOB, you could stay with them as a member. Or you could transfer to another one of our 25 other professional bodies for whatever reason that you need to. So as long as you stay as a member of one of our licensed professional bodies, that's fine. As Jeff said a short while ago, the second point on this slide is important in not just gaining, but retaining your CEnv registration. You will need to continue to complete and record appropriate CPD activities each year. And the final one, in some ways, is possibly one of the more simple ones. So you need to continue to pay the annual fee to your professional body to cover administrative costs and so on. We're going to finish off really with some quick-fire Q&As based on things that we see quite often come up as barriers to applying. And we're going to take this in turns. So I'm going to take the first one. Can I be a chartered engineer and a chartered environmentalist? In short, yes, you can. You're a highly competent engineer, which is demonstratable with CEnv. That's absolutely the right thing to do. But beyond your excellent core engineering work and the nod to sustainability within the Chartered Engineer competences, your wider environmental knowledge and experience and the linkages between each element, from air pollution to low carbon technology to urban design for net zero solutions, they can be showcased with CEnv registration on top of your CEnv. There are hundreds of professionals with CEnv and CEnv, and it's worth noting that if you already have CEnv, you don't need to rewrite your entire application for CEnv necessarily, because some of the competencies cross over or are very familiar or similar, especially the C and D competencies that Jeff just mentioned. And on that note, we're always going to encourage you to speak to your professional body, but in this instance, you could speak to your professional body and see if there are any time-saving options for your CEnv application when you have recently achieved CEnv with them as well. And I think the combination of CEnv and CEnv titles is a massive force to be reckoned with, so it's worth considering. I'm going to hand over to Jeff for the second question.
Thank you. So how long does the application process take? And well, there's a very useful answer. It depends. So the follow-up question is, well, it depends on what? Well, a lot can depend on when your professional body asks you to submit your application. They may have particular application windows. So it might be that you are asked to submit in March or September. And if you submit now, well, it will be looked at in March. If you submit in April, it will be looked at in September. That would add to that length of time that the process would take. Also, your professional body will have assessors. A lot can depend on their availability to carry out an assessment of your application. But generally speaking, I would have thought that you would be looking at, when you submit your application, you should be assuming everything's in order, that you should be getting an interview, an offer to interview in 2 or 3 months, maybe sooner. But that's just generally what I think it would be. And then it would be probably another month or two before you'd hear whether or not you were successful.
As with another number of things through this webinar, it would be best to speak to your professional body that you plan to apply through. Ask them if there are any deadlines coming up, or any assessment windows, or any assessor availability
Absolutely.
issues, and they will be able to tell you.
That's what I said earlier about speak to your professional body about their assessment process. I mean, they may accept an application at any time, and that would obviously wouldn't take so long. So
absolutely. Right. Question number 3. Do I need to meet all of the CEnv competencies? Now, you may have already heard this answer from Jeff earlier in the presentation. In short, the answer is yes, you do need to meet all of them. But you don't need to use a completely different project or example or piece of work for every competence. So you can hit multiple at a time, so within the same project. So don't make things more complicated than they need to be. You can use multiple examples, you can use voluntary work, you can use all sorts of different things in that sense. But you can take examples from the same project. You don't have to make things complicated by having different projects, different for every competency or anything like that. So just worth bearing in mind. And the final question.
Right. So I don't have a master's degree. Can I be a CEnv? This is a classic question. Yes. As it says there, you certainly still have the opportunity to be a CEnv. What the rule, the eligibility criteria that you need to meet is you need to have acquired a level of knowledge equivalent to a master's level degree. You don't necessarily need to have a master's degree. If you can provide evidence that you are working and thinking and acting at master's level, then you should be fine. But as Phil has said, and we've said all the way along, it's your professional body that will be able to tell you what your academic achievements, well, whether they're sufficient or not. And that's why you need to speak to them. But you certainly, I repeat, you certainly don't have to have a master's degree to become a CEnv.
Okay, fantastic. That brings us to the end of our Q&As. Now, as promised, and once again, if you are watching on the recording, if you need to leave early from the live webinar, please feel free to contact us with any questions you have via the email addresses on your screen. I'll leave them on the screen for a moment before we head on to the Q&A section of the webinar. If you have a question for us, now is the time. We will try to get through as many as we can within the hour, and we do have quite a bit of time for it, so we shall see. That was a whistle-stop tour of the process, so if you can think of something that we have either missed or some detail that you want to know yourselves, then let us know. We can try and answer those questions. To start things off, we did have some questions through from when you registered for the live webinar, and we're going to try and address a couple of those to begin with. The first one being, can existing qualifications count towards environmental chartership? For example, an NVQ level 7, NEBOSH, and so on. Can I give that one to you, Jeff, to respond to?
Yes, because that fits in quite nicely with the do I need a master's degree? That's exactly what I was saying about speaking to your professional body. I've not got a master's degree, but I have got this and that and this. Is that sufficient? Does that meet the academic criteria, the requirements? And the answer is probably, well, yes. But it's something that they have they have the ability to say yes or no. So again, it's speak to your professional body. But yes, certainly any qualification may add to and be useful. So.
Yeah, this is a recognition of the build-up of your expert knowledge. So the fact that you've been on, you have different qualifications, that will certainly work towards it. Have the application forms been updated recently? I started the process of completing last year, but I need to finish and submit the application this year. I'll give that one to Jeff as well, I think.
Okay, so I mean, they may well have changed because last year we had a comprehensive standards review. So if we were talking about how to become a CEnv last year, we'd have been talking about 12 competencies. The competencies, the standards review, during the standards review, the competencies were reduced to 11. So it's quite likely that the application pack will have changed to reflect the new competencies. So I would, it's the same answer. Speak to your professional body and get the current version.
But it's worth noting that those changes are more like tweaks rather than
Absolutely.
a full overhaul.
They're a tidying up more than, and they're bringing up to date rather than anything major. You've still got to do the same things. So
don't panic. It's not
Oh, no,
it's not a major change. There are some slight changes to it, but yeah, certainly worth getting the up-to-date application form. I'm going to head on to some questions that have been asked live on the webinar. So the first question we have is quite a straightforward one for us to answer. I am a Nigerian. I hope there's no restrictions for this registration, which I assume means, are there any restrictions because I am from Nigeria? And the quick answer to that is absolutely not. You can apply for Chartered Environmentalist registration wherever you are in the world, and indeed people have done. So you are absolutely welcome to apply for CEnv registration. I believe currently there are just over 15% of the CEnv registrants outside of the UK.
Yeah, the key thing is, have you got the knowledge, have you got the experience to meet the competencies, not where you live, so, or where you're located. So
absolutely.
Apply.
Next question we have here is it only via the professional body that we can apply to become a Chartered Environmentalist? Over to you, Jeff, on that one.
Yes, basically, simple answer, yes. We license those professional bodies. We actually call them our licensed members, but we license them to carry out the assessment process for CEnv or RMP or RMTech on our behalf, because they know about the sector that they're in. We couldn't do it for every sector, for everything. So that's why we license them. We make sure that they can carry out that assessment process properly by doing regular reviews. But yes, you have to go through. We don't do anything. It would have been called years ago direct registration, but we don't offer that, and I don't think we ever will.
Okay. Next question. This is quite a bit more specific. As an investment professional who works for an asset manager or as an asset manager in a ESG product strategy team that is responsible for investment product design and fund launches, is the CEnv route via IEMA feasible? My main concern is that despite my extensive knowledge, the role can be considered as not direct enough. I could start that one off, maybe Jeff, you might be able to add to it. Whether it's feasible or not will be a good question to ask IEMA. There are Chartered Environmentalists working in investments in climate finance, in banks, and more. So there is certainly a route available for you. Now, obviously, we can't really determine whether your experience you've built up meets all of our criteria, but I wouldn't see that there's particularly a blockage there because of the role you have in this instance, because I believe that other Chartered Environmentalists have gone down the route. Whether they've gone through IEMA or not, I would imagine a number of them have. And off the top of my head, I believe I can think of at least three, but that's personally knowing. Anything you want to add, Jeff?
Well, there are other licensed professional bodies that have environmental management in their title, so it's not just IEMA. There are CEnv, so that's pretty much water, and CEM, which is ecology, but also include environmental management. So it wouldn't, if IEMA would be probably the obvious place to go, but there are other options. It might be that what you do fits in better with one of the others, but I would speak to IEMA first.
Absolutely. If they are the professional body that comes to your mind as your potential route, speak to them first and see what they say. And I think they might be able to give you some examples and potentially some chartered environmentalists to speak to who are in your field of work. Next question we've got here is, and I don't know if we'll be able to answer this one, what is the success rate of chartered environmentalist applications? And given that the applications go through our licensed professional bodies, and I don't think we gather that information, do we, Jeff?
It's not an easy one to answer precisely, but generally speaking, I would hope that anybody who applies that goes through to interview should be successful. The interview is really to confirm and to fill in any gaps rather than to try and prove that someone shouldn't be. If you get through to an interview, then you should stand a very good chance of being successful. And if you want me to put a figure on it, I'd probably say that 95% of people that get through to an interview would end up being registered. And that's only because when carrying out license reviews of our professional bodies, they don't tend to have many unsuccessful. It's the quality of your application. If that's good enough to get through that stage, that initial assessment, you've got a very good chance of being successful.
Okay, good to know. Now, this is an interesting one. What work do chartered environmentalists typically undertake? That is a large answer to be able to give. If we were to run through the...
Over to you.
Thank you. Now, there are some kind of key or core roles that chartered environmentalists possibly take. We know we have a lot of chartered environmentalists working for consultancies, for example. And you're looking at people, the core kind of group would be your environmental managers, your sustainability consultants, your ecologists, and so on. But then the breadth at which the chartered environmentalist registration reaches is pretty wide. I mean, we've just spoken about climate investors and people working in finance and in banks and that kind of thing. Now, they might not be what you would typically think of first when you think of a chartered environmentalist, possibly. But if you look at the list, if you look back at the list of those logos that were on the screen of the 26 professional bodies that you can apply for, you've got the likes of fisheries management, waste managers. You've got who else have you got, Jeff?
Well, you've got energy covered. I mean, It's almost better to talk about sectors. So you've got energy, you've got the water industry, you've got engineering in many forms. There's just such a wide. You've got agriculture. I mean, we've now got three that are in the sort of agricultural sector. So that is, we've got another one coming on shortly. So it's a very, as you say, a very wide range.
But you're typically looking at people who have got a reasonable amount of experience, it's fair to say. Those who are potentially managing decent sized teams, possibly. Those who are looking at the strategic elements of your work, looking after reasonably large projects, those kind of things. Whereas a registered environmental practitioner might be looking after slightly smaller projects, might have slightly less budgets, might be working slightly less with larger clients, whatever that might look like. So they're kind of managerial roles.
I was just going to say CEnv would tend to be managerial roles.
Yeah. But linking back to the finance thing, we know that we have a chartered environmentalist who is a CEO of a bank, for example. So it's quite a wide variety there. But so that's kind of your managerial type areas. But you've also got the those who are kind of technical experts. So they might not be managing big teams, but they have an extreme level, well, a very good level, detailed level knowledge of experience of quite technical kind of hands-on roles. So hopefully you're getting an idea of the broadness or breadth of roles that chartered environmentalists have. Anything else to add there, Jeff?
No,
Okay.
it's too big. It's too big a. You could go. You could talk about the wide range
Yeah.
a lot longer. It is a wide range of sectors that are covered.
I think if you go onto the Chartered Environmentalist page on our website, there's a half decent list there of potential roles that Chartered Environmentalists have,
There is.
but that is certainly not an indefinite list. That's for sure.
It's just to give you a taster, really,
Yeah,
a few ideas of what kind of thing is covered.
that's right. So I'm currently a member of CIAT at associate level, and I am working as a sustainability consultant. Which of the categories do I qualify for, CEnv or the others? Now, that's an interesting question, which brings up a few different points. For a start, CIAT, if you're a member of CIAT, they are licensed to award the Chartered Environmentalist registration. They don't have a license to award Registered Environmental Practitioner or Registered Environmental Technician currently. So in that sense, Chartered Environmentalist would be the one you would potentially need to aim for if you were to go for that within CIAT. Now, in terms of the level you're currently working at and your experience as an associate at associate level of CIAT, you might currently consider that you might be at the registered environmental practitioner stage, but that's all dependent on your personal experience and so on. Anything to add to that, Jeff?
No, not really. I mean, I mean, it's the same answer to lots of the questions. Speak to CIAT.
Yeah.
They will and say, look, this is what I'm doing. Can I now apply for CEnv?
Yeah.
And they'll advise you, well, you need another year's experience, or you need to be doing this or that, and work out a plan with them.
Yeah. And I believe you may need to be a full member to be able to apply
Well,
for
it might be
CIAT.
that. It might be that you need to become a full member of CIAT, but they will be able to inform you of that.
Yeah. I'm going to move straight on to the next question, if that's okay. And now this is an interesting one, and we do get asked this a reasonable amount. And it slightly depends on your perspective in some ways, but we'll give you what might be our perspective. I work in the oil and gas sector, which is not seen as sustainable. Can I still apply for CEnv? My
Yes,
reaction to that is yes, and Jeff's
yes,
is as well. That's good.
yes.
That's good. We have a good number of chartered environmentalists working within sectors that you might not necessarily think of as sustainable. Now, as you people on this call may know more than us, there is a transition that is required or is in progress to move towards more sustainable practices or more sustainable ways of fueling what we do in our everyday life these days. And if we have chartered environmentalists or those who have credible environmental expertise making those changes, or indeed working as the in the oil and gas sector as it is, but just making them more and more sustainable day by day, then that's something that we couldn't not encourage, essentially, as is my perspective on that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So whether you're part of the transition or whether you are in those organizations, making a difference, making that the unsustainable parts of their business more sustainable, then that's
Yeah.
at this stage got to be a good thing,
Well,
I would suggest.
becoming a chartered environmentalist, that's your credibility,
Hmm.
and your opinion will count for more within that sector. So I would definitely consider applying.
Okay, hopefully that one helps. So next one is, my work experience spans more than the environmental sector. I have, however, worked in the environmental sector for over 20 years. So do I need to include earlier work experience in my CV, even if it is unrelated? Can I throw that one to you, Jeff?
Well, yes, I mean, really, what is in your CV should really be focused on what helps you meet the competencies. So if you've got work experience that shows that you meet A1, A2, A4, blah, 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 whatever, it would be good to include that. If it's just to show that you've been working in the environment for a few years, that might not necessarily be needed. So it's a sort of tailored CV, I would suggest, focused on what helps you prove that you meet the competencies. And that would be better to use in your application because it will help the assessors. They won't have to go through a lot of information. You're providing precise, concise information about what experience you've got. And sort of relevance, I mean, possibly the more recent is likely to be more relevant. But if you worked on a project 10 years ago and it's still relevant, there's no reason why you couldn't mention it. It's all part of what's built you into the person you are and the experience you've got.
Jeff, would I be right in saying that whilst obviously the Chartered Environmentalist registration is environmentally focused, parts of it are what you potentially call the soft skills. So you could showcase those soft skills in a
Well, yeah,
non-environmental setting. That makes
yeah,
sense.
exactly. I mean, if you've done a presentation, if you know done presentations to people, communicate, about your communication, and it's something a little bit further away, then if you've got evidence that shows you do that, then that's fine. It's the A and B ones that probably need to be a bit more recent and more relevant than the C and D. I mean, if you've been working in the environmental sector for 20 years and you've been doing CPD, you've probably got a huge record, huge amount of information about what you've done, courses you've been on, things that you've attended, other qualifications that you've studied for, journals that you've read. I mean, all sorts of stuff that will be there. So that shows that you meet D1 just by having that. So you're right, Phil. I mean, I think the C and D ones are probably that slightly older would be appropriate. It's as I say, the A and B ones that you want to try and be a bit more recent and relevant.
Okay. Next question is, how often are we expected to renew our membership, which I would assume registration? And do we renew through our professional bodies or to the society directly, since some of us belong to more than one of the professional bodies mentioned? Jeff, do you want to have a stab at that one?
You have to pay an annual renewal, so you pay that to your professional body, and then they pay that to us. So that's renewing your membership. Well, your membership is of the professional body. Your registration is with the society. We don't do direct registration, as I said before. So you will go through your professional body, and yeah, I mean that's the question about where you belong to more than one. It's deciding which one is the one that is most relevant to your current work, your current sector that you're in, would be the one that probably find it best to go through in applying for CEn.
Yep. And it's worth noting potentially what the renewal process looks like for registrants every year, which we've mentioned processing the fee and we've mentioned CPD, but it's worth noting that you don't have to submit a full application like you do
Oh,
initially every
oh
year.
no, no.
So if that just to avoid confusion, that's not
To,
something you have to do.
to show that you are remaining competent and relevant and up to date, it's doing CPD. You'll probably be asked to say, have you done CPD? And you'll say yes. And then it might be that your professional body says, well, can we see your CPD record?
Okay. We'll move swiftly on. If your application for CEnv is unsuccessful, are there any exclusions or restrictions for reapplying again in the future? As far as I'm aware, no.
No.
All dependent on the ongoing scheduling of application deadlines and things like that through your professional body. But
what we would expect your professional body to do is to give you feedback and constructive feedback. So what made you unsuccessful? If you've got through to the interview stage, what did you do at the interview that was not good enough this time around? So you'll get guidance from your professional body on what you can do to improve your chances of being successful next time. We only charge for registration, so we don't actually charge for you resubmitting an application. There's no fees from us for that. So it's another one of those, ask your professional body, I've not been successful, why wasn't I? And it's a bit like if you go for an interview for a job, you ask for feedback. What can you give me feedback? And then you can work on the aspects that you need to fill the gaps that were the assessors found. And they'll certainly help you because you're their member. They want you to become a registrant. So yeah, there are no restrictions, but speak to your professional body.
sounds like good advice to me. Okay, so the next question is, I am in the process of applying for Chartered Ecologist, as I have worked as an ecologist for 20 years, but I also take on a wider remit in my role through EIA. Can I apply for both, and would that be through CEnv? Now, my response to that would be you can apply for both, and you could apply for both through CEnv. There are other routes. There's no other route to become a chartered ecologist. But you could become a chartered ecologist through CEnv and have your chartered environmentalist somewhere else if you wanted to, theoretically. But whether there's any need to is up to you to decide, really. So you certainly can do both through CEnv. And it's worth talking to CEnv about that, because they may be able to assist you through that process to make it slightly more streamlined, potentially. And you wouldn't be alone. There are plenty of chartered ecologists who are also chartered environmentalists for the exact reason that you've given, with the wider remit beyond purely ecology and into the more wider joined up thinking in some ways that your role might cover. So I would suggest you're doing the exact right thing from what you said. So it's a good thing to be looking into. Okay, next question here is there any specific platform like a directory where anyone can connect with certified chartered environmentalists and or chartered engineers? Now, we do have our online directory of chartered environmentalists, but that's fairly restricted because you can only really find one person at a time if you know parts of their details, basically. That's more of a registration checker than finding somebody to connect with. There is no specific platform for that. A couple of things to think about would be to speak to your professional body, because a lot of them have mentoring programs and therefore have a lot of people available to you, some people available to you to then connect with and talk about that. Some of which may well be chartered environmentalist and chartered engineers. I nearly said ecologists then. So I don't know which professional body you would be looking at. Potentially it's one of the more engineering focused ones. It might be. So have a think about that. One thing I tend to do a lot, which is quite straightforward to do, is search on LinkedIn for CEng and CEnv and click on people and see who comes up. Potentially you will find a few, it's fair to say. Do you know anything in terms of a chartered engineer directory, anything like that, Jeff?
They've got something very similar.
Right.
It's really sort of, what did you call it? A reg.
Registration checker.
Yeah, I was going to say reg check, but something like that.
Yeah.
I think they've got a more snazzy title, but it's the same thing, and it's really for someone to confirm that someone has said, I'm a chartered engineer, I'm a chartered environmentalist, to confirm that they actually are. Where did you get it from? Well, I got it through CEnv. Okay. Name, professional body, boom, boom, qualification, CEnv.
Yeah.
Ah, yes, they did. And it's really, it's one of those, it's for that really. So,
Okay, fantastic. If your application is unsuccessful, are you likely to have to pay a full application fee again, or is this up to your professional body? I think Jeff potentially covered that, I think, but essentially speak to your professional body. They
exactly.
will know exactly what that process will look like. We don't charge you, well, so we charge our licensed member per new or current CEnv. So by being unsuccessful, that doesn't come onto our radar or our payment system, it's fair to say. So from us, there's nothing there. But we understand that the professional body has gone through some administration, has gone through some assessments and that kind of thing to get to the point of you being unsuccessful. So speak
I
to them.
I would like to add that if you're not having to submit a full application, you could make a case for not having to submit a full application, pay a full application fee. So if you've been unsuccessful and it was a couple of things and you've addressed those couple of things, maybe a nominal fee would be more appropriate than a full fee. But again, it's not something that we would influence, we have any control over really. It is up to your professional body, but have a conversation.
But be positive. You might not
It's good to talk.
you might not be unsuccessful. So
Well, yeah, I think that,
but it's worth knowing the details. So I can see why you'll be asking that. Next
yes,
question is, I am a QS, which I assume means quantity surveyor, working in Saudi Arabia, and I am a MCIOB, so a member of CIOB and an associate of RICS, RICS. Am I qualified to apply for CEnv membership? And by that, I assume we mean Chartered Environmentalist registration. I think CEnv would be an added value while working for special island projects in the Red Sea. Do you have any direct entry applications to CEnv with CIOB? I think we've touched on a few of those points already, but essentially, well, for a start, you can't apply for Chartered Environmentalist registration through the Society for the Environment. If you are a member of CIOB, so that would seem like an appropriate route for you to go down to gain your Chartered Environmentalist registration. So have a direct conversation with CIOB, and they will be able to give you a bit of an idea of whether you are meeting the CEnv competencies, or might be able to give you some kind of guidance or a mentor or something like that. The fact that you're a QS, which I think is quantity surveyor, that certainly isn't a barrier, that's for sure. I don't know how many QSs we have within the registration, but I can highly imagine there's a few. And in terms of, you said you think it will add value while working in special island projects. We know that there are a lot of chartered environmentalists in Saudi Arabia for a start. And we know that there are quite a few chartered environmentalists within CIOB, and they are increasing currently. They are quite the story when it comes to increasing numbers of CEnvs at the moment. So all, I would suggest, positive. Go for it.
definitely go for it.
Okay. Okay. So I haven't got any more questions coming in live. Let me just have a quick check of the questions that we had in before through our registrations and see if any of them have missed anything that we haven't talked about as yet.
There was one, even though you said not to, but there is one in the chat.
Is there? Okay.
How many case studies is suitable to meet the competence?
I'll leave that one with you.
The easy answer is we don't know. You need to speak to your professional body. I mean, as Phil said earlier, I mean, it might be that you've got one particular project that you've worked on that meets all the competencies. It was such a big project. It was detailed, and it covers everything. And you could refer to that. You don't need 10. You just need to show that you've reached that standard, that level within the competencies. But speak to your professional body.
Okay. Let's do a few quick fire ones through the ones that were submitted whilst registering for the webinar. If I'm currently unemployed, could I still apply for CEnv? The response to that is yes. And to be honest, what a perfect opportunity to apply for CEnv, because you might have a little bit more time to look at the CEnv application, to think back on your career to date, and to put that down on an application form and submit it.
The only thing I would say is it depends. I think it would depend a lot on how long you've been unemployed.
Yeah.
If it's a recent thing, so your work experience is still current. But if you've been unemployed for 3 years, you know, as hard and as that is, and how sorry I am for that, it's less likely that you're going to be successful. So if it's recent, definitely. And what better way to increase your chances of getting another better job?
Absolutely. And one thing we haven't mentioned yet, I know we talked about the potential careers that, or job roles that a chartered environmentalist might have. Self-employed is one thing we haven't mentioned, and we do know that there are a lot of self-employed chartered environmentalists. I just thought I'd throw that in there in case there are any self-employed professionals out there worth considering.
There's another question on the Q&A.
Oh, is there? Hold on. With regard to soft skills, would being a member of a conservation group be relevant? It depends if you can make it relevant, really. There's nothing unrelevant about being part of a conservation group. It depends what you do within that conservation group and how that would apply to the competencies, but you could certainly include it. That'd be right.
You would imagine it could cover part of C, which is all about communication. So when I misread that, and I thought that was a conversation group, and that really would help you meet the communication. But
yeah, okay. Well, I think we're just going to go for one more question that we got from the registration when you registered for the webinar, and then if we haven't got any more live questions, we'll probably bring it to a close.
okay.
That question being, and I quite like this question, what's the easiest route to chartership? Now, it's fair to say that what we do at the Society of Environment is that we have a standard for CEnv registration. And whichever route you go through, you need to meet that standard. So there is no difference across the standards. What I would say is, in terms of the easiest route, it's probably going to be the route that most aligns with your experience. So if you are an ecology, well, let's think of a good example. What would be a good example? If you are in construction and you try to apply through fisheries management, there might be that might be more challenging. Having said that, you might be constructing fisheries, so there are things to consider there. But
yeah,
the easiest route is to go down the route that you think is most suitable to your career and your work to date. But in terms of the standards changing, there is no easier route.
What I said earlier about the A and B competencies may well be contextualized. So if you are a builder, CIOB might actually contextualize those A and B competencies so they have a more I don't know whether it's the right expression, a building flavor, rather than, so you'd be more, it would use a language that would be more familiar to you, therefore that would be less problematic rather than easy. I won't say easy, but less problematic to actually answer, to actually provide the information for, because it would be easier, you would have thought, to actually connect what what experience you've got and you're saying on your CV to what the competency is asking for. But just one thing to finally add is that everybody who's on the register, everybody who becomes a chartered environmentalist meets the standards, and they stay on the register by continuing to meet those standards. So
absolutely. And the collection of 8,000 professionals meeting those standards is quite the force to be reckoned with in our eyes.
yes,
for sure.
and it's growing. It's growing.
Mhm.
You'd be joining a growing band, and good luck to you.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the close of our Q&A and the close of the webinar. So that's basically it for us today. Thank you very much for listening and taking part, and thank you to Jeff for your insights. If you're watching this as a recording on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel to gain notifications of new videos and webinar recordings, and hit the like button. That would be fantastic. If you are watching on our website, please click on the YouTube logo in the bottom right to get to the subscribe and like options. We shall see you in the next webinar. Thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.